How far are you willing to go to get revenge on those that have wronged you? In a quest for revenge, when someone is engulfed by their hatred, is their quest justified even if they harm those around them? Where do we draw the line between getting revenge and a self-destructing mission? These are just some of the questions posed within the pages of Deadly Class by Rick Remender and Wes Craig. Today we'll be discussing the series and exploring how these questions are provided a not-so-easy answer. We'll also be discussing on what these answers tell us about the creators, as well as the reader. I'll refrain from any major spoilers in this essay, however, I highly recommend reading the series as a whole. As always, all resources and methods to purchase the book will be linked down below. While you're there, hopefully buying the book and checking out some of my other videos, why don't you go ahead and give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me what you want to see in the future. Deadly Class is a series published by Image Comics, with issue 1 released in January of 2014 and finishing with issue 56 released October of 2022. The story takes place in California during the late 80s. Our primary protagonists are in their late teens and are social outcasts driven by their own personal vendettas. Oh, and one minor additional detail that might come up later, they also attend a charter school under San Francisco that specializes in training the next generation of assassins. Remender stated that the inception for the series came from being scorned by the major comic publishers. He set out to create a punk rock comic influenced by the alternative sentiment of his youth. He also stated that the characters were inspired by Richard Linklater's film Slackers. He refers to the story as Linklater's Kill Bill as a means to convey the hyper-reality and over-the-top violence within the series. In an interview with Sci-Fi, Remender refers to Deadly Class as his channeling of the animosity towards mainstream comics. He elaborated on this by talking about how this book allowed for himself and Wes Craig to fully embrace the opportunities presented within creator-owned publishers. The American culture of the 1980s is commonly divided into two factions: American traditionalism and counterculturalism. During the political turmoil of the time, Americans would often retreat from the reality of the events, opting instead to adopt an American-centristic view of the world. As a consequence of being avoidant to reality and witnessing the American society's naive approach to political instability, Gen X would rebuff idealism and embrace the dour reality. If the prevailing sentiment was avoidance, then the punk movement with Gen X would create a means to force confrontation. The series begins with Marcus, who witnessed the death of both of his parents when he was a child. He watched as a person jumped from the Golden Gate Bridge and landed on both of his parents, killing them instantly. He doesn't blame the person who jumped, but blames the source, Ronald Reagan. Now you might wonder why this is, and let's just say that Marcus has had enough time to reflect on the moments leading up to his parents' death. Before I can go into detail about Marcus's reasons, we need to be like the beginning of every Scott Snyder story and give you the historical context for the plot. The Iran-Contra Scandal occurred during 1981 to 1986 and was the result of Reagan's administration illegally selling weapons to Iran in an attempt to subvert an embargo. The reason behind this arms deal was to raise funds to support a rebel militia in Nicaragua named the Contras. The funding of this group was deemed to be ineligible through legislative appropriation of money, but this scheme was the brainchild of Reagan's administration, attempting to halt the progression of the terrifying prospect of Marxist-Leninism being successful. So when someone asks you why nations do not operate under socialism, it's because of America's need for the societal imperialism and dictating the values that all other countries should maintain. That's the good old American values for you. Alright, moving back to Marcus. He and his family are Nicaraguan. They were put into the middle of this conflict, and he blames Reagan's administration for the American upheaval, as well as the societal and economic collapse of America during the late 80s. The instability was spawned by Reagan's trickle-down economics, which posited that benefits to the rich would inevitably help the poor. You know what would actually help the poor? Increasing taxing of people whose income equates to 45.8% of the global total wealth, which, if you're wondering, is 1.1% of the world's population that owns that wealth. Long story short, if you ever wonder why America operates in a totalitarian society under the thumb of evangelicals and capitalists, you can basically blame Ronald Reagan's policies and you'd be right about 99.998% of the time. Okay, now actually getting back to Marcus. Marcus is willing to go to the ends of the earth to get this revenge. The narrative paints his path as righteous, but also shows his mental deterioration as he becomes more lost in the pursuit of his justice. Marcus is self-destructive. He allows for his intrusive thoughts to guide him. His primary flaw is not being able to love himself and trust the people that love him. The narrative showcases his distrust of others to be a survival instinct. This is dating back to Marcus's time after his parents dying. He had to fend for himself, so he can't trust other people. He's a case study in the consumption of revenge. If you let that hatred overcome yourself, how can bonds with others form? They can't. Marcus is self-concerned throughout the series, and consistently second-guesses anyone he associates with. He only longs for those friendships or relationships when he sabotages them beyond repair. As the narrative progresses, he's able to come to terms with the actions that he's made and how the only way to stop the cycle of violence is to offer forgiveness. If revenge is a consuming force, forgiveness in the series acts as a means to wipe the slate clean. Are there stumbles in his road towards redemption? Of course, as to be expected, but it's a spiritual reprogramming that Marcus is attempting, and if nothing else, he tries. In direct contrast, Saya is a kindred spirit with Marcus, both having the same driving instinct, just that Saya is more controlled. She defines her goal for revenge, and when she falters from her goal, she's negatively impacted. As the series goes on, the feelings that she has for others are diverting her attention from her goal, and she must sever those relationships. She also sees those relationships as a weakness, or a means for someone to exploit it and hurt her further. She shows the duality in that consumption of revenge and having it overtake you, having you second guess every decision made and every person you put your trust in. From issue 1 through issue 56, Marcus shows progression and regression, but Marcus always feels fully rounded. Yeah, he's an ass, but he's also a person that just needs a hug. He feels as if he could change under the right circumstances, and he just needs that dependability to make that change. The series introduces us to multiple cliques that are made up of students, typically being all from the same demographic. From people that are related to the currently active members within American intelligence agencies to notorious organized crime groups. Every character's motivation is due to formative experiences from their youth. This informs their current motivations, and it all stems from violence against them in their past. Willie grew up in South Central Los Angeles. He witnessed a rival gang invade his home and murder his father in front of him. Maria grew up in Mexico and watched as her entire family was wiped out by a despot, then was forced to be adopted into the care of said despot. Billy grew up with an abusive father that was a corrupt cop with a gambling addiction. His father abused Billy until adulthood. Saya grew up as the daughter of the head of the karaoke syndicate, a stand-in for the Yakuza, but due to her being a woman, she was unable to attain her father's position. Her brother took over his position after some events led to his death. No spoilers. Outside of cliques, the students without legacy at the school are deemed to be the rats. Marcus and Billy fall into this category. Now, it might seem like this series could be a meditation of trauma, and it could revel in its self-seriousness, but it's able to balance these grim topics with humor that lightens the blow for the emotional gut punches when they come. Is some of the series esoteric and only able to be appreciated by those that are fans of the medium of comics and late 80s punk music? Yeah, but there's also a scene where Marcus trusts a hangover fart and shits his pants. So hey, fun for the whole family. The running theme is the cycle of violence. Every character has been harmed or harms others, be it emotionally or physically, typically the latter. Even in scenarios that would merit the harm done, the narrative never paints it in a light of glorification. The reader is always presented with this event and is forced to confront the consequences. With a lesser creative team, it could be like a CW version of John Wick, where the story is overly melodramatic and endorses violence through the lens of being justified. But that's not the case within Deadly Class. Remender and Craig balance the high-octane action with a mirror up to the reader, almost as a Rorschach test. The story can differ based on lived experiences and the reader's perspective on the morality in revenge. Remender said that a lot of this book is expressing some of his angst and frustration, as well as pulling directly from his life. This is felt throughout the story by how truthful the interactions and inner conflicts of characters resonate. It feels like Remender was expelling demons and able to formulate into words what others would need years of therapy to verbalize. It's a form of self-loathing and resentment towards others that rings true in the work. At first glance, it's an action thriller, but when you proceed to peel back the layers, it's a cathartic exploration of trauma. Wes Craig's work in this series is astounding. Much like Remender's writing being influenced by his adoration of punk music, Craig manages to evoke emotions through his pencils that are fluctuating in tempo. From small, quiet scenes that are rendered with light pencils, to the adrenaline-fueled action scenes rendered with harsher and more thick lining. Upon my reading, and prior to doing research, I was notating the influence of Will Eisner on the work. To my surprise, during an interview, Wes Craig actually refers to Eisner as one of his primary influences. I guess I'm actually good at this? The common practice for Wes Craig in this series is setting character interactions in the foreground and the background typically being a flat color or minimalist detailing. The utilization of this method allows for the interactions to portray more weight behind the dialogue. Craig is demanding the reader's attention and enhances the emotional stakes. The sheer direction of the characters during the interactions provides the reader with a further insight and understanding of the interpersonal dynamics. Wes Craig is only enhanced by the coloring decisions by Jordan Boyd. The use of flat coloring evokes a tangible tone to the book, typically utilizing brighter shades while also incorporating negative space to showcase stylization. In early issues, Marcus experiences an acid trip after ingesting 6 tabs of acid at once, and then they all take a voyage to Las Vegas. Craig is able to capture the psychedelic visuals by way of Marcus's POV and visually depicts the trip devolving into a nightmare experience. Craig's action scenes provide the perfect flow of motion, while also giving the reader the opportunity to experience the pencils further if they choose to analyze panel by panel, and incentivizes the reader to study every character interaction. Remender provides morally complex topics by way of flawed characters, and he ensures to not feel like it's offering an easy solution to the reader. You're able to empathize with the characters without the narrative excusing that behavior. There's a deeper sense of emotional complexity that the story provides. It doesn't hold the reader's hand to a concrete conclusion, but it provides the reader with this insight into characters' motivations, and it shows how the events would affect the characters later with tenfold ramifications. Remender makes sure that one status quo is not overstayed and constantly increases the stakes. There was multiple times that I was reading the series and I would finish one issue and be hesitant about reading the next because I knew that with every issue break, there would be a guaranteed rapid escalation. The pacing allows for a fluid reading experience by never fully lifting the foot off the gas. The flow in storytelling from issue to issue is seamless. It works perfectly within the Compendium format that I chose to read the story. In non-action set pieces, the reader is foisted into situations containing the building of tension, constantly questioning if the character's motivations are reliable or a strategic deception to assume power. The story utilizes the framing device of a notebook to showcase Marcus's inner monologue, which I'm such a sucker for. My favorite decisions are when narrative devices are utilized and they give a reasoning as to why we're privy to the psyche of the protagonist. Inner monologues are fine, but utilizing the thoughts of Marcus that he would never reveal to anyone gives that authenticity towards the true intent. Let's be honest, Marcus is a mess, but Remender makes him somewhat redeemable with small moments. The reader is able to see the light in him, almost signifying under different circumstances, he would be the reader, or maybe the reader could have been him. I know I've said the word revenge multiple times in the essay, but it's honestly the driving force behind every character's motivation. And with that, it explores the morality within revenge. Marcus's quest for revenge never provides him with the peace that he believes will come with it. No matter how many times he's wronged by friends and strangers, he's too busy dwelling in the past to focus on the present. The complexity within Marcus and how revenge is portrayed led me to search for philosophers' ideas of how morality impacts revenge. So please allow me to live up to my title as the most pretentious on comic YouTube and cite some sources. Nietzsche believed that the difference between one gaining justice and gaining revenge was the honesty of the person with themselves, asserting that justice is a euphemism for revenge through a morally superior standpoint that can be obfuscated by the desire to get even. Nietzsche believed that revenge was a concept that was transactional, the offender and the offended. If we are to seek punishment of others, are we gaining anything, or are we perpetuating the cyclical nature of violence? Nietzsche posited that a better alternative to revenge is acceptance of the prior event and the determination of learning from past experiences to inform future decisions. Philosopher Francis Bacon echoes the same sentiment in his piece on revenge by stating, "That which is past is gone and irrevocable, and wise men have enough to do with things present and to come. Therefore, they do but trifle with themselves that labor in past matters." It's only when Marcus is able to forgive and move on when Marcus doesn't feel consumed by his quest. Alternatively, Saya devolves into her seeking of revenge and spirals as a result. The balance of morality and seeking punishment on transgressions is portrayed in a way that I felt compelled to continue reading. It swept me away from the absolutism of right and wrong and exists in the gray areas. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, all the other things that every single YouTuber wants you to do. Obviously, we've been having some changes recently, so tell me if you like this, if you like this new dynamic, and that's it.